After a 3-month-long trial in New York, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman has been found guilty on all counts. A jury convicted Guzman on 10 counts of federal indictment, including engaging in a continuing criminal enterprise, drug trafficking, and money laundering. His lawyer, Rikki Klieman, told CBS This Morning what he thought of the jury's verdict.
I don't think he got a fair trial. I mean, look, the press has to do its job, and I completely get it. But the press was overwhelmingly negative before the jury was even picked. We were presumed guilty. It was very difficult to get around the myth of El Chapo.
CBS News legal analyst Rikki Klieman joins me. Good to see you, Rikki.
Nice to see you.
I love the cape. It looks great. Fantastic.
There's a message there.
There is. I'm fascinated by what Klieman says, saying that he doesn't think El Chapo got a fair trial because of the myth surrounding him. What's he talking about?
What he was saying is that before these jurors were ever put in the box, that there was so much publicity for so long, particularly after his escapes, that there was this mythical figure of El Chapo as being the biggest drug lord in Mexico, who was a phantom. And that image of this myth was pervasive throughout the trial. So I think that's what he's talking about. But for me, far more important, listening to Rikki Klieman this morning, was his comment about why he feels he can appeal, and the appeal may have some merit despite the avalanche of evidence. And what he was talking about there is it's not so much the myth of El Chapo, but what it is the fact that he felt his cross-examination and that of other defense lawyers, as well as their opening statements and closing arguments, that they were really foreclosed from talking about very many things that they felt they had a right to talk about.
If he does appeal, what happens to El Chapo? Does he go? Does the judge deliver a sentence before the appeal, or if he decides to appeal? I'm just trying to understand the mechanics.
What happens is it's a matter of process through the Bureau of Prisons. The notice of appeal, I am sure, is immediately filed, if not yesterday, today. In the meantime, he will be held, I assume, in Manhattan, where he has been held under the most strict of security. The only people he can see are his lawyers and his twin daughters, no one else. And he is in a lockdown throughout the day. That he will be sentenced on June 25th to the mandatory life imprisonment because he was found guilty of running a continuing criminal enterprise. And at that point, once he is sentenced, the Bureau of Prisons takes over and they designate the place where he goes. So while the appeal is pending, he is serving his time.
Got it.
And he will serve that time, I predict, at Supermax Prison in Colorado, where the worst of the worst, the most dangerous of the most dangerous are housed, from which there is no opportunity of escape.
So the question will be, and certainly I guess if you are a family member whose family loved one was killed because of the actions of El Chapo and his criminal associates, you believe that justice has been rendered. But from an objective point of view, was it worth the time and the money to try El Chapo?
It depends on your perspective. I think that the prosecutor was extraordinarily articulate yesterday in his statement outside the courthouse, in his firm and fervent belief that justice has been done, that what this man did, and now you can say he did it because he has been convicted, is that his drug empire caused the deaths and the destruction, not only of people, but of things. But there are not dozens of deaths. There are thousands of deaths when you look at the amount of drugs that were brought into this country directly from the Sinaloa drug cartel. So, of course, yes, justice has been done. The difficulty that we have is that the Sinaloa drug cartel, among other cartels, continues to exist. But that doesn't mean we should not have prosecuted and convicted El Chapo. Perhaps that sends a message down to Mexico or other places where drugs are being imported from, that if you do this, you are not only facing possible imprisonment in Mexico, but we're coming to get you.
It's sort of a risk-reward thing, right? If you're a drug dealer or if you're a drug kingpin in Mexico or any of the other countries where these cartels exist, which is, you know, yes, there have been some very high-profile cases, El Chapo, Pablo Escobar, others who have gone down, either have been killed or have been put away in prison. On the other hand, the drugs keep flowing into this country and around the world.
And
the addiction rates are rising.
Well, addiction rates are rising.
The money is growing for these folks. And so
it really is.
It's like we're losing this war.
We continue to lose the war on drugs, but it doesn't mean that the war on drugs is not worth fighting.
Right.
And I do think that one of the dispiriting things that we get to learn, aside from this trial, is that there are more seizures than ever. And now we're dealing with fentanyl coming up from Mexico. And we're dealing with the issues of heroin. And we know in this country we're dealing with the issues of methamphetamine and, of course, opioids. And the Sinaloa drug cartel, whether it is being run by El Mayo, the former partner in the indictment, he has never, by the way, it's so interesting, he has never been arrested. He has never been captured. And he is looked at as an equal. He was indicted equally with El Chapo. But you also have the family, the sons of El Chapo, who are still running the Sinaloa drug cartel. So it does continue to continue. So what we'd also like to see is we'd like to see Mexico step it up.
Right.
And go after these people in a way that tries to stop more of it at the border before it gets here. What you do about the demand in the United States, I have no answer for you.
Yeah, and it's going to be hard because the allegations were made during this trial that there's a serious level of corruption that exists within the government of Mexico. I don't know if that was proven in this case, but certainly it raised a lot of questions for those of us who were following.
No doubt. It certainly was proven, at least as to the level of law enforcement in Mexico, which is why the Marines had to go capture El Chapo and not the police.
Exactly. Rikki, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Vlad.